All right, then I would say we can get started. A couple of more people are still joining, but I'd say we kick it off. I am very excited about today's session. Very excited to hear Michael Krumm from Fielmann talk today. Michael and I known each other for quite some time. I think we met for the first time when he was still at Otto Group, and always been in touch. I think we've always been driven by similar ideas and convictions for a better working world. And now Michael is leading the organizational development at Fielmann. Is, among other things, responsible for the operating model there, which we will talk about today. And I think, particularly in Germany, most people know Fielmann, but very few people know about the great company behind, right? A family-led business with a real long-term vision, something that I'm always particularly passionate about. And for us at WorkPath, it's a great privilege for us to be working with Fielmann. I think it's a very progressive organization, a lot that we are all about in our everyday work is what also drives Michael and his team, which is why a lot of the things that are meaningful for our community, our joint work, we will hear about today. I think this will be a great case study about customer centricity and how you really embed that into your ways of working, about leadership that leads with simple, clear metrics and that's able to translate strategy into execution and outcomes, and generally around how to build an organization that works around shared target outcomes, which can strengthen autonomy and self-organization, and again, this very entrepreneurial organization overall. So very much looking forward to that. Welcome, Michael. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for sharing your story with some, I think, very tangible real-world examples.
Thank you for having me.
And just to get the group engaged, everyone in the audience, we're going to start with one or two questions that relate to what Michael is going to talk about today. Let's dive right into that. And we have prepared a survey tool where you will find a link on the right side, or you can also scan the QR code here. First question we're curious to ask, and it also will get us a bit of a sense of who's in the room today, who's in the audience. Would you say that the most important KPIs that define your company's success are clearly defined and visible across your organization? I'm gonna wait a couple of seconds so everyone can open Slido, and then let us see the results. Okay, let's have a quick look. So 25% confident, 22% now saying these metrics are very clear and accessible, somewhat clear, 30% roughly, and then a little bit less than half of the audience says not clear. So I think that resonates. That is similar to what we also see in other organizations, and yeah, we'll get back to that topic, obviously. Then I think we have one more question. Do these KPIs meaningfully influence how you prioritize your work on a regular basis? KPIs that are available in your organization. So right now we got almost all groups represented here. Some more. Okay. That's a little bit, I would say, better than the results from the previous question. What we often see is that there are indeed some very present and very dominant KPIs, but maybe closer to the just operative day-to-day, but not so much the strategies that actually connect to higher level metrics in your long-term strategy. But again, also here we'll come back to that. We will have a bit of time, I think, in the end for questions and discussion if you're interested. But that was just to get the conversation started. And with that being said, thank you very much for participating, and I would hand it over to you, Michael.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Big words to live up to, so let's see what we can do. Walk you through a bit of what the Fielmann Group is, and then walk you through how we approach outcome management and how we actually try to translate that into powerful actions that lead us to get better. So about the Fielmann Group, I hope you all know who Fielmann is, and maybe you're also a customer. And we are basically pretty much on a growth path. I'll not go through all the numbers, but if you look internationally, we are at 24,000 employees, and we have quite a lot of customers, especially in the Central European region. And we are very proud, if you look at the bottom left, of a very high customer satisfaction that is actually at a level that is, let's put it that way. It's not like normal often, and we are pretty proud of that. And we also think that this is a major cornerstone that we need to nurture and to improve continuously in order to be successful. So if you look at the world, we recently expanded into the US, and we also expanded into Spain in order to approach new markets and to understand what customers there need and to deliver that as good as possible. So often Fielmann is a very, in the perception, very German, maybe Austrian or Swiss company, but there is a lot more. At the heart of Fielmann is, I quote, the philosophy of this company, and it is, we really mean it. So often, not often is maybe a bit too harsh, but sometimes philosophies are kind of things written and they're not that strong. And this company, just to give you an idea, I had a call with pretty new in the company with my boss, and we had a call, and there was an external call, and the call wasn't good. So it really wasn't good. And in the chat, I asked like, "Hey, what do we want to do? Do we want to cut the call short?" And she said, "No. Please remember, we are speaking with a customer potentially, very likely. So we treat everyone as good as we can and think about that and act on this as good as possible." And this is actually like in the heart of this company is, let's do the very best for the customers, and let's treat everyone like we want to be treated ourselves, want to treat our family, want to treat our friends, so that they actually get what they best need. And at the same time, we have a purpose, and with that purpose, we help everyone here and see the beauty in the world. That everyone is actually also very important for us. So Fielmann is not the company that tries to aim for the people with the larger budget. We literally aim to have everyone enabled to hear and see the beauty in the world, meaning we also aim for that. So we are more thinking about volume and coverage and satisfaction than at each particular point the highest margin or the highest amount of sales, which even can translate, because we have quite long customer retention periods, into us seeing a very good reason to get the best glasses, for example, for kids or for others, maybe even not at a profit. So that's part of that. And speaking about KPIs and speaking about outcomes, this also translates into compensation criteria. So management and the management board, they're incentivized on customer satisfaction, and we measure the customer satisfaction very systematically to entrench that into everyday talks. And this also translates into, at least the first time I saw that, I was quite astonished. So we have like not the most stores in Germany, and we don't even have, if you look at the amount of sales, so the money coming in, not even the highest amount of sales, but the highest amount of units. So every second person, or more than every second person in Germany, wears Fielmann or bought something at Fielmann. And there you see the model and the purpose and the whole philosophy already translated. This company started with Günther Fielmann saying like, "Yeah, I don't like that you have those prescription glasses and they are not as good, and they lack a variety, and you see that people don't have that much money. So let's change that." And that's actually something you see here. But speaking about where we want to go and where we are going, so Vision 2025, and also about outcomes and KPIs, we are nearly at the end of 2025, and we are very optimistic that we actually reach the target. And for that, it helped us a lot to define KPIs and outcomes and to have repeating messages. So if you look, for example, at the 25% EBITDA margin, that number is known to literally everyone in the company. I would never meet anyone that doesn't know the number. The corporate strategy, in order to reach that, that's known to the people a bit different. So cultural change, we were a German company, kind of traditional, built around the founder, growing with the founder, very powerful. And then Mark Fielmann shifted that towards a more modern company that actually delegates decision, enables people to find playing grounds, and in order to do the best they can, to find their own ways, and then maybe to fight for them without having an order or having interaction. Also, digitization. This is something, if you look at a lot of companies and a lot of markets, we are pretty proud of to say, okay, we are a player that offers digital services that are actually bought. And at the market, we actually have a very, very good shot at even the disruptors of the markets, like, for example, Mr. Specs. And also internationalization, you saw that Fielmann was very much focused on Central Europe, so especially Germany. And you saw that we already went over the pond, so we are in the US, and we are expanding further. But again, speaking about outcomes and KPIs and how to get there, and I'll just show you brief insights in the approach we're taking. Understanding first how we measure that, where we want to get to, that is a real big catalyzer. And you better know those numbers, let's put it that way. So also thank you for the insights into the surveys. That also helps a lot. So a bit more deeper into that, speaking about KPIs and how we measure that. So if we think about the core KPIs, and those 6 are the core KPIs, there is like a self-enforcing loop at the top. So that is something we call customer value that ultimately translates into unit sales. So people buy things, and that's something I really like in discussions also internally. Often you get like hooked up or somehow in a loop that is not very productive when you speak about sales. So we need to have more money. Yeah, that's okay, but how do you get that? What's the way to go to? It's rather a result. But if you look at the loop, if you have happy customers come back, like the customers then those customers will come back. They even will recommend. Then they do buy things. So we have the active customers, and as we have a very good relationship with the customers and do everything we can in order to satisfy them, we have a good customer satisfaction, and that flywheel basically is going. And that translates into unit sales. And from there, we go into the business value, which is sales and ultimately profit. But in the thinking, it is very important to understand, with a lot of volume in our model, also comes healthy economics. And that is our task in the process end, to make that happen, because just because you sell a lot doesn't mean that you make a profit. But we don't want to go there, because that's not the model. Remember the purpose. We have everyone, so we don't go into higher sales through increasing prices like we potentially could even. We always try to get there through happy customers, through growth. And this is really entrenched. So that's the reason why I put so much time on this, because understanding those 6 KPIs actually helps to shape a lot of discussions. And as a short repetition, because this is the framework I'm just showing you that we discuss a lot internally, and also in that form. So there's always a reference on those, and we repeat the message because people are obviously coming, some people forget that, and so on. So we did a couple of transitions that are rather hard, and we're not done on everything, and not everything is like done and shiny and perfect and so on. But we have a very good method and a very good approach, at least to my mind, where how we can move, how we can improve things. And I'm also very, very much forward to learning from you and to learning from others in order to improve, because I'm rarely like confident that that's the best thing in the world. So that's something that is really helpful. So over to you, Johannes.
Yeah, just quick question again for the group. Thank you, Michael, for this first sort of insights. I think everyone in the audience, you already get an idea, right? How Fielmann not just has a strategy around business KPIs, but really embeds customer value in that kind of simple overview, right? I think also in the sphere of strategy and strategy execution, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? So it looks simple, but how this is integrated in routines and reporting, how to make sure that every one of these almost 30,000 people really knows the numbers, I think that's just a great achievement. So looking forward to the next part in the moment, and you already started answering here. Customer value. We would like to know how clearly is that customer value reflected in your company's strategy goals versus maybe rather some CFO metrics you will find in any profit and loss. Let's hear some more voices on that one. Okay, as Lena said on the side, we will share the results, not just the slides, but also results from these surveys afterwards in case you want to go back there. Look, there's some more responses coming in. We leave the poll open in case you might just come back with a fresh coffee and still want to respond. The more of you respond, the clearer the picture, obviously. But I think that's a good signal in between, and then we hand it back over to Michael.
Okay, thank you very much.
How do we do this? How do we do this is the question now, right?
So let's put it that way. That's how we do a couple of things. So how do we all do that? I don't know. But just to go back to the customer value and business value discussion, this is a daily question. So this is something very interesting. So as soon as you want to have budget, some things that are new, that are not operationalized, and that you want to change, that's the question the board or the budget owner will ask you. Full stop. That's literally the first question. People sometimes get annoyed with it, but I'm very happy that the top management especially is very consistent on this, because also if you think about behavioral change, which in the end is very important in organizations, if you want to move that, consistency and contingency is actually very, very important in order to get those changes. So I want to have, I don't know, a new position. Yeah, fine, but what's the customer business value? Yeah, I don't know. I think we need it. That's not an answer. So that is good. And then we also need to see how it translates. So that's okay. Anyway, how do we do this? So organization development. That's the area I'm privileged to work in and to build that up together with a couple of people. And our mission is to maximize the capability, effectiveness, and potential of our people and organization. In the end, how can we make sure that people actually can work as good as possible? So here's a personal opinion, and I try to found that in a couple of other things too. But if people have a connection to the market, so somehow understand if people are buying things or doing or like valuing what you're doing, and you actually understand the connection between this and your salary and your work, then there will be, in a healthy environment, there will be motivation. People will like that, and people will grow a lot. And we are, again, not perfect. And in those webinars or those sessions, it looks also hopefully good. But there's a lot of things to be done. And as we started organization development, that was April 2022, so a couple of months after joining, we were having like identifying dimensions where we have issues. So organization performance, it's very hard to come from like, I want to do something, into end customer value. Alignment, yeah, have fun, guys, and we do the right things. And as soon as like I'm crossing into another unit, oh, they are doing something different. That's interesting, but that doesn't fit together. And congratulations, we have an issue. Then on focus, like how do we make sure that we get the focus properly doing, and how do we make sure that the organization continuously evolves. I'm just here now want to discuss with you on the alignment, which is, so everything is interconnected, right? But in the end, the question is, how do we get to something new? And let's assume that everyone does their best at work. You could make a point for the opposite assumption in some cases, but that's rarely productive, obviously. But let's assume that. Then this is also like from Lean a lot. Then everything that isn't working as good as it could be is like waste due to misalignments, due to friction, due to whatever. And the first step to do that is common language. I'll not repeat everything which I said before, but there are like 5 questions everyone needs to be able to answer. It should be possible to answer them consciously, but it's okay if they are like answered implicit and people kind of know what the answers are. So the first thing is, why should this be done? So someone comes back and like has glasses broken and they hand it to you and you see that they destroyed them on purpose. What do? Okay, it's kind of like happy customers, treat them. So how about we help them? So why should this be done? Because we really mean that. We want to treat every customer like we want to be treated ourselves. Maybe someone cut it like the kid cut it. I don't know. There are a lot of reasons, but our take is, let's do what we can for the customers. The next question should be, who should do it? Should I do that? No, please not. It should be an optician, obviously. What should be done? How about we replace it or repair it, or offer a replacement or have a discussion and so on? How should it be done? Maybe now. So when they're in the store, it could be done. And that also is the answer to when it should be done. We could put that a lot more abstract on higher levels, but then we come into like the purpose of organizational development, what we are doing here. If we have a customer, we offer them some products and services. They have kind of an effect on customer value, but that's a minor definition, and that also has some impact in general. And just a side note, we had a discussion about the UN goals, like the sustainability goals, and Mark Fielmann said, yeah, let's discuss it and so on. Then we obviously had all the discussions and we're planting a lot of trees and doing that a lot. And but he said the 2 major goals he's supporting, I don't have the actual formulation of the goals, but he said that's education and work, because without properly seeing and hearing, you neither can learn nor work properly. And that was like, whoa, okay, that's important. And that's something obviously that also motivates people. And again, if that comes back, it usually translates to business value, and that comes from us delivering as the organization really good products and services. And with that, we come to our result, EBITDA in the end. So this is the connection, again, that most people at Fielmann live. I'm not sure if it's most, like everyone, but the people that are very close to the numbers, they are doing that. So how do we get there? We have something that doesn't work properly, or we want to be better, or something else. And I like to draw this because there are a couple of ways to think about that. So while I do like good project management, sometimes project management is violated towards a system to assign blame. So you do a plan, then something comes in the way. You need to do like those whirly thing, like go backwards, and something fails and so on. That is kind of normal if you do something that is hard to do. So not everyone does it, or you can buy it in the supermarket or something. So let's embrace that. There is some amount of chaos in that. So what do? We obviously have current state of value stream, and then we want to have future state of value stream, including metrics. So for example, I don't know, glasses take 9 days to manufacture properly. It's all custom made and so on. And now they take 8. And in order to get there, we try to build upper and lower boundaries. So when is it good enough, or when is it like even better than expected, aka leading indicators? And then we try to understand what needs to happen and how we can support. If the work is a lot better than assumed, let's maybe accelerate that. If the work is actually declining, maybe we need to steer. But in between, there's a certain room, freedom and responsibility, we call it, where you have a lot of degrees of freedom in order to reach the state we're heading towards. So
beautiful. Again, something we've been talking about a couple of times, right? Something we experience everywhere. There's a dominance of project management, and it creates this apparent security. Things can be controlled, but so many organizations, and I think that's a problem we have not just in the economy, but also in a lot of other public institutions. We're so obsessed about doing things the way they're supposed to be done and proper project management, you could call it, that we're sort of losing the vision, the goal, the outcomes out of sight, where we're also heading. And I think in the business world, but in general, if you have a problem, you don't always know how to solve it. You just have to start with what's the future picture there where we want to head. So also, yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think that's a really big mission for everyone in our community here to contribute to that in our organizations. We're now getting towards the softer factors and cultural behavior. We would like to ask you, and for this, we're not using the polls, but we would like to use the chat here on the side. Are there any cultural or behavioral factors in your companies, in your organizations, that are being measured that you're aware of? Because I think in the last part of Michael's session, we'll hear a bit more about how they come into play and how you can actively work with them to make sure the organization succeeds towards its goals. Michael, maybe to kick it off, do you have an example what could be a cultural or behavioral measure maybe?
Oh, we're using a lot leadership functionality. Like, is leadership helping you? That's something, or they're just prescribing things. But there's coming things in. So embracing
leadership helping you. Are people embracing complexity? Yeah. Other supposedly soft factors. Here's some more.
I like the supposedly because they're rarely soft.
True, it's true. I think what we regularly see is that there is this suspicion, like, first, can it really be measured in a reliable way? And secondly, can we actually prove the causality, the impact of soft factors on real business and business metrics? But yeah, obviously, it's where there is a lot of magic in. Employee engagement, none. We don't measure any cultural behavioral factors. Yeah, that's also fair and very much what we see in a lot of organizations still. Company culture, employee satisfaction, I think that's the most common one, oftentimes with some sub-metrics there, ENPS. Yeah. Okay. Also here, we leave the comments open. Maybe we'll hear a couple of more. Maybe also Michael's last bit will give you some inspiration. Let's continue.
So measuring the so-called soft factors, I'm just like, often it's so hard to measure, and yeah, but we don't know, they change quite fast and so on. And that might be true in parts, but in parts it isn't. So there are a couple of things. For example, personality traits, yes, they are kind of softish sometimes, but there are some harder limits, and it's very hard to change them. So, but anyways, that's sidetrack. So, how do we approach this? So, just an assumption, and this is a, let's say, disputable one. But the first thing is, we at Fielmann, we are in the end a human or people-driven company. So the main touch point is in the stores. So you get there, you are treated well. We have very high trained professionals, and they measure things. And then, in best case, you hear and see better afterwards. Okay, fantastic. So it is a human thing. And let's assume for a second, human behavior is complex, but not random. So, and I think we kind of can agree. But if we do this as a strong assumption, then we can say, okay, if we have an employee survey that we, in this example, conduct once a year, it's about 47 questions, we can identify the most promising levers to have a substantial impact on our EBITDA margin. And I had a million discussions on why we go on EBITDA margin. So why don't we go on employee satisfaction? Why don't we go on happiness? Why don't we go? Yeah, we also measure that. But in the end, if you go on the KPIs and everything, there are two extreme points. Remember the 6 KPIs: customer satisfaction and EBITDA. And we need to measure both, but it needs to materialize at some point. And we do this in a certain way. So I crossed a couple of things out because not so public, but I just want to show you the mechanic. On the left is a slide that has been shown in a top leadership workshop, and that has been shown a couple of times. So we're in a second phase of our Vision 2025 growth plan. Again, always repeating back to the metrics, and we have a couple of things we want to do. So your tasks are: you want to work on measured initiatives, and we want to continue to work on our cultural transformation. This is something our CEO gave out and says that's it. So what I do now is I say, together with my colleagues, I'm saying, okay, wait, in order to do this, we want to identify the most promising lever to increase unit sales productivity, personal cost ratio, progressive lens ratio in stores. This is kind of, if you think about the framework, coming from the more generic ones, one down, this is already the one down. And if you look at that, and this is something where we do a lot of statistics, I just want to walk you through the idea how it materializes what we just discussed before. We do have a survey, and that survey has a lot of questions like, we usually have enough staff to get the job done. That ranges from 1, I don't agree, to 5, I agree. And then we are able, due to the store structure we are able to calculate the relations between the single items, so the single questions, and the KPIs. And this really helps. So if you look here, we usually have enough stuff to get the job done. If in the survey the people answer like one more than others, then usually we have a quite high impact on the unit sales amount. So obviously the perception of staffing and being staffed enough is relevant. Then going to leadership, my direct manager informs me openly and transparent about topics relevant to me. That is really important. So we better get that above 4 or 4.5, because that directly translates into, in average, unit sales, which is, if you calculate the numbers, quite a lot of money. And there are those relations, and even the isolate relations, they help us focus a lot. And I told that in the beginning, 47 items, and we also now have like open questionnaires and open comments, so also like qualitative information. But out of the 47, 40 aren't here, and this is important. So often you have discussions, especially in organization development and changing the so-called soft factors. There are often discussions that are very close to, this is right because, but the because, this part after the because is often weak. And it's kind of very important that we I think get there to say, this is important because we see it is important. Now we need to also think about why that is important, what we do with it. And what we do with it, sorry for German slide here, but this is a slide that has been shown on the meeting of the leaders of the sales organization in the core markets, presented by the board member responsible for people and digital. And it translated, and she spoke about it, and she said, okay, she played truth or lie, right? So there has been a sentence, for example, making or improving good teamwork improves the unit sales, and then people need to say yes or no, right? And that is true. So we know that. So there's a very good reason to invest even more into good teamwork. One could say, yeah, sure, good teamwork will help unit sales, but again, there are a lot of other items that don't show that relations on a statistical basis. Not saying it isn't there, just saying we don't see it empirically. And this also resonates quite well with the organization, because people kind of understand, okay, wait, I have a direction, I have focus, I can work on this. It also resonates because then if you dive a bit deeper, you can go into the singular stores, and then you understand patterns, then you can discuss it and progress from there. So with that, understood, we have, like, in the end, a bit of discussion room and so on. I just would like to go to the key takeaways. So a couple of key takeaways, and I like the slide because it's so powerful. Colorful. I wanted to say colorful, but kind of also powerful. So I'm by training a psychologist, and did also work in neuropsychology a bit and so on. And it is astonishing every day how we are basically constructing a lot of things. And also, it's kind of very good to not be aware of that all the time, because that is painful, or could be painful. And it's still there, right? So it's not that we can assume that now that person, or I got the reality. That's something, at least what I understood in what I know about psychology, is not the case. So we need to actively work through that. And it's something I really like about our economic system. The market's still there. So no one, I hope at least, no one forces you into a Fielmann store. And you basically go there due to whatever reason. Maybe you're used to it, or you got a recommendation, or it's cheap, or it's good, or it's both, or it's all, or there's nothing else. I don't know, a lot of reasons. But it's a decision, and it might not be a very conscious decision, but it is still a decision. So there's a connection to what we do and how people react to it. And keeping that alive, that's also the reason why I'm very much always pushing towards, let's look at the KPIs, let's understand, like, the cascade of the metrics we can understand, It becomes harder the closer you get to your own work on the impact. And let's keep that alive. Let's keep that discussion alive in order to understand what really works, and not to follow our biases, like sunken cost bias or anchoring or whatever you have. The next thing that I really like, somehow children decide to stand up after they fell and got a bruised knee. And that hurts. They are not crying because they, I don't know, want attention or they have fun at that. It hurts. It just hurts. And they get up. And in the best case, parents stand there and say, hey, great stuff. Or not so good days, they're kind of, oh God, let's see what happens. But it works. And it's astonishing. That's something I really love about nature's a bit too much, baby, but it's very close to that. The self-efficacy, the thing of, I can do this, I want to do this, I'll get there, and that's a direction and so on. And learning from examples, like basically everyone else around that kid is walking. And so it is possible, unless you have like impairments or other issues, but it is possible. So I'll have the energy, I'll have fun, I'll have drama on that. And this is also something in organizations I think we are obliged to build, like environments where people expect from themselves, I can do that. It's kind of romantic sometimes, because there are job profiles that don't have that entrenched. Not sure if we should accept that, but let's not make it too idealistic. But that mechanic, that is very, very powerful. Because in the end, and this is what happens, so the people in the stores, and I myself, when I'm sadly not often enough there, but the people in the stores, they are, they get really good feedback. And they get like, oh, I finally can see again, or I can hear again properly. And I'm not like poor now. And that is good. So, and that, and the combination of the system to trying to translate understanding if something works, and this could be, I don't know, changing an IT system, which is really, really far away from the customer. That small thing. How does that translate? And that's like the idea behind how we try to do that. We fail a lot. It's hard, but again, self-efficacy is like still getting there, and step by step. I think we are moving in the right direction. Let's put it that way. That's it.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for all these insights. I think it's not just interesting, but also motivating. Definitely some things to take away. Again, I think we can all be grateful to have these kind of companies here in Germany and Europe, these kind of employers. I think a lot that Michael has spoken about. How can I connect teams? How can I connect my organization to the organization's purpose, to the people we serve? I think there's so much, purpose, energy, engagement in it. And the next couple of years, we'll all have to build, we all have to do a lot, achieve a lot. And I think building these kind of companies, building these kind of operating models will play a major role in it. So thank you so much. And I have to say, we seldomly have speakers who are so spot on with their time management, and that includes me. So thank you very much also on that one, Michael. I have one invitation to make. We just go one slide further before we can open it up for a couple of questions if there are any. Two things you could do, both of them very low entry barrier, no costs, that we would like to invite you as WorkPath. We heard a lot about KPIs and how to productively work with metrics. And I think also a lot about metrics that are not just about measuring business impact, but also customer value, not just lagging indicators, but also leading indicators that guide our way and provide some autonomy to really work in a value-oriented way. If you want to have some first sort of like self-assessment, some kind of benchmark, maybe also where your team, where your organization, where your business unit stands with that, you can try the KPI Mastery self-assessment. I think we can also share the links afterwards. And we have a full expert team who does operating model workshops all day, every day, basically, where we talk to customers, try to understand how does this look like today in your organization? How do you try to translate strategy into results? How do you engage the organization in the process? A lot of what Michael has been talking about today. And again, also here in the first step, that's really just about exchanging notes, sharing best practices, sharing samples from other customers. So if you're interested in that space, those are two very easy things to do. Very warm invitation to all of you guys. And now, again, thanks to Michael's great time management, we would have time for questions, discussions. You can use the chat. Maybe you also have just questions to follow up on. Handing it over to you. Maybe, Michael, are people also allowed to reach out to you via LinkedIn or
Always.
something like that?
That's always. Thanks for listening, I would say. Yeah, sure.
Waiting a couple of more moments. If you have any questions, if you'd like to engage. But then when we share the content of today afterwards, you'll always also find a link to reconnect there. Last chance. All right. Hi, there's one.
How does it work out? So finding hypothesis and what did you learn there? Unsure what you mean with hypothesis. Could you specify that a bit? So if you mean the hypothesis behind the connections of the metrics, that is something we actually did exploratory. So basically a lot of models calculated what explains the variance of the KPIs as good as possible. And the questionnaire, we basically took the usual validate. No, we actually didn't make assumptions on the connections of the metrics. We did it very, and thank you for the specification or the details. We basically did it in a kind of stupid way. So there's a lot of KPIs, and there are the survey results, and let's run a lot of models against that. And because the connections aren't simple often, and let's calculate the best models that are optimized towards explaining the difference in the KPIs. That was the way. However, this year, actually, I have that on the table for review. We combined the 3-year metrics and towards KPIs, and that's also very interesting because it looks like the stuff we did 3 years ago has profound impact on the metrics we see now, which isn't very surprising if you think about like culture work or leadership work. But this is also assumption free, meaning get the KPIs, get the survey results, and then the models do the rest.
All right. Hope this one was answered. Then I would say, if there is no more questions, we wrap it up for today. One last time, thank you very much, Michael. Thanks for preparing, for hosting today. Thanks for all the insights, and thanks to the audience for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Oh, there's one. There's one. Wait. How
There's one
involved decentralized in the organization and setting goals? Good question. It depends. The answer is it depends. So I would say that if you take the board and the next 2 levels, it's very closely aligned and very connected. So we apply back briefing mechanics. So there is structured discussion, and then there is like, okay, that's something I want to do, and then what do you intend to do, and then it goes like upwards. So this is a very, very, very clear cascade of outcome management, OKRs. You could name it how you want, but in the end, that's something where we want to go to. That's how I measure it. That's what I intend to do, and so that's it. Then it depends a lot on the different areas. So there are some areas that are by nature a lot more, let's say, collaborative in goal settings, definitions, or strategy definitions. They obviously do it also very close in a work path. They do it basically in an OKR thingy. I personally don't use the word OKR a lot because it creates reactive things sometimes. But outcome management, that's like the thing, right? So we want to go to outcomes. And then there are areas that are more or less very operational, or let's say more classical. And then sometimes it's they're not involved in setting the goals. So centralized at the top, and then it basically fragments, and a couple of areas are, let's say, more into that direction than others. Which I personally, sorry for the additional note, which I personally don't even find bad, because there are certain things where it's very good to have a plan. It's very good to have a project. It's very good to have repeatable things. And people often forget that because I don't know actually why, but it's very, very good to have even instructions. And maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense to involve too much. But some involvement usually always helps. And others, if you don't involve the organization and do it properly integrated, good luck, because it'll fail. Software as an example.
Thanks a lot for the last minute question, Stephanie, and thanks for the answer, Michael.
Thank you very
much. I feel like, how long do we have to wait? Are there maybe any more questions coming?
The last one will be, when is the meeting done?
Exactly. No, I think now we can really wrap it up. Again, you know how to reach us, you know how to reach Michael. If you would like to continue the conversation, there's always a way. It was great hearing all of you, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.